Let's learn how to mark our floor so that you can practice your steps and train yourself to take steps in the same direction with the same space between each step. This is the marking on the floor that I showed you last time, a little bit more detail. You'll notice that there are 3 yellow, or actually 2 yellow V's, and then there's a line at the end that's yellow, angles in. And then there are 2 green lines. I'll be showing you about those. And then there's blue lines. They may look black. Alright, and then of course the white. Get yourself some electrical tape, and if you're doing this on carpet, you're going to have to make sure you get a tape that doesn't leave a gooey residue. But if you're using a wooden floor or a plastic parquet, you can use electrical tape. I've not had any difficulties with it leaving residue, but with a disclaimer that it may leave residue on your floor. You begin standing by having your hips over top of your heels. You want a nice straight line from your heel up to your hip on both sides. You don't want your feet too close together or too far apart. You want the mass of your body settling straight onto your heels. And then of course you want your shoulders, you want to stand straight with your shoulders above your hips, and of course then you think your heels. You have this nice straight line. You mark the floor where both of your heels are. And then you put a V. And you'll see I used yellow tape, and I'll zoom in on this a little bit later, but I used yellow tape to make a V. And then you're going to begin, after this, to mark a straight line straight out from your feet. And you want a step distance. I use, with my stepping, 1, 2, 3, almost 4 of my feet out from my heel. 1, 2, 3, and almost 4 from both heels. And then you mark your straight line. You do the same thing backwards. Bring it 4 steps backwards. 1, 2, 3, and almost 4 back. And then you mark this straight line. It's basically when you step into a front stance, or as in Kutadachi, your foot is going to go straight, but you don't want to just step your foot out straight. You're going to, in order to step up there, your right foot's going to come over to your left, and your left foot is going to angle out a little bit, and your attitude is going to be forward, and you'll step forward and out. Your foot goes forward just for a tad, and then goes over. And I like to draw it straight up and then kind of goes in a crescent shape over. Same thing with your left foot. When you take a step with your left foot comes over to your right foot. Your feet are angled out, but your attitude of your body is forward. And you think of running your foot forward and then over to the left. This is a half crescent kind of shape. And your foot ends angling in. And again, your foot returns home the same way it goes out. So, you've got your heels marked, and then you've marked your line straight. After you step out, when you're preparing to step out, your heel is going to come, your feet are going to come together, and you'll mark your line coming straight forward and then over and out. When you land, your knee is going to be straight over top of the center almost of your foot. You don't want it over your toes, and you don't want it behind your heel. Right up over the center of the top of your foot and angled in, not too far, 40 degrees, 45 degrees in that area. And then of course your knee directly over your foot. Your back foot is not pointed forward, but rather angling out as well. So if you think of my line down the center as the middle, the front foot is angled in towards the center, the back leg is angled out away from the center. Okay, let's try this again. So you've marked your heels, and then you've drawn a line straight through your heels, approximately 4 steps forward and 4 steps back. each way. Now you can shorten it if you want to go to a higher stance. You don't want to go so deep, you're going to have to adjust that accordingly. But if you start with your heels together and step out, it should work out the same every time. So here we are. If you're stepping backwards, the V, your foot will angle on the inside line, and then your foot will go diagonal back. You land in a kibadachi, and then you can pivot into a front stance. Again, your front foot, your support foot is going to angle this way. Your attitude can remain forward. And you step back if you're going to pivot into a front stance. Hips are here and then they pivot forward. So get yourself a grid first. And you can mark this center line. I like to use white tape. Mark straight down the center line. That's directly between your 2 feet. And then I just have the outside frame just as a grid. You can practice your back stances the same way. Your foot will land. Remember you took those 4 steps, 2, 3, 4. Now if you take a step forward into a back stance, your foot will land right on that line, right on that mark. The only difference is instead of being angled in as a front stance, your foot is angled or pointed straight forward. You can step back in the same fashion. Your foot lands then on your back line. And your feet travel, when you're doing these back stances, they travel in a straight line down this blue line. Your heels are what you should think of traveling down these lines. Not the toes or not the center of your foot, but your heel is going to then follow these lines each time. Okay? I'll zoom in on this grid so you can mark it. And in fact, I'll zoom in on it and go ahead and keep talking about it so you can... Here we go again. Really quickly, you mark your 2 points for your heels. And you do this by standing straight up and mark a straight line basically from your hip down to your heel on both sides. That's the width. Or you can measure from your hips if you want to, across your hips, this distance. And then measure above your heels. Feet straight forward. After you make your heel mark, put a piece of tape on each heel, and then make a V where both of your feet were. The length of the tape can be about the length of your foot. And then what you do is you bring your foot together, just as if you're preparing to take a step forward. Your support foot angles out, and your other foot joins it. Your heel is above this mark that I made. And then you bring your foot forward and over. It lands in a straight line away from where your foot was. But again, you're not stepping like this. You're stepping like this, up and over. And you're thinking, just as if somebody's foot were right here, you come together and sweep the leg, or sweep the foot out of the way. When you land, your knee is directly, straight up and down, over top of the center, almost palm of your center part of the center of your foot, not behind your heel, and not lean forward over your toe. A nice straight up and down line. You're going to have to kick your knee out or cock your knee a little bit. Don't let it come in like that. Go out a little bit. And angled, of course, your front foot is angled in. Make sure your feet try to travel back the same route that they came. It is important to pivot your feet before you take the step. But keep your attitude for the front stance, keep your attitude forward. Now, you set up your grid line. These are the points where your heels were. And you've already taken 4 steps out. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you mark a nice straight line. And you do the same thing. 4 steps out to your heel, 4 steps back, and you have another heel point in the back. And this can help you practice 2 steps. Okay. And you can keep your line straight by making the grid. The grid mark, of course, you have your center line, which is easy to find. And then measure out equal distances. I used, I believe, my foot when I did this for me. And it made a nice grid. Then I have my heel lines here. And this is going to help me practice the back stance. Kokutsudachi. I begin here. I want to prepare my foot, so I make an L. And then my left foot is going to go straight down that blue line and land at the 4 foot, at my 4 foot line there, where my foot landed before. Of course, in the back stance, you want your attitude of your body turning forward more, your back leg kicking out, not let the knee travel in, but let it kick out, knee out, pointing the same direction as your foot is pointing. Same thing with your front leg, nice bend, not too far, you don't want your knee over your foot. You have 70%, 65-70% of your back leg of your weight you're supporting, and 30 to 35% of your front leg. You step back. Taking a step backwards in Kokutsudachi is the same thing. This chart, your foot lands straight down on the blue line, and you have your foot mark 4 feet. You've already done that behind you, and you land like this. This will help you practice landing your feet in the right place, and hopefully get you to, when you're doing the kata, where you begin is where you finish. I hope this helps you to learn how to take some steps and train so that your steps are equal. And again, just start with your heels, and then you can work yourself out from there. I found it was most important to make the grid, get your center line at the very least, and then mark 4 feet out or where your step is going to end if you want to do deep stances where you're practicing. Like I said, I did 4 feet, and 4 of my feet, I mean. And the same thing, measure backwards. Then you have your straight line going through your heel mark up to your finish line, where your foot's going to land, and then the same thing on the other side. I made on the grid lines here where my line is where my foot ends. And if I want to adjust my stances to not go so deep, I'll just land my foot like in a back stance. I'll have my toes not go so far. If I want to go nice and deep, I'll just bring my foot further beyond that line, depending on whether I'm practicing a very low Kokutsudachi or a higher. Kibadachi works on this as well. You just bring your feet sideways, and then you step out to that marked line. And of course your attitude is forward. The hips this direction, and you're looking this direction. Again, hope this helps you practice some of your stances.